What's up, everybody? Wow. I just enjoyed episode 7 and 8 of The Last Dances. I'm sure you did. Man, I can't say enough about this documentary. I saw, I think it was JJ Watt, I think, tweeted out a week or so ago that 10 episodes won't be enough. And I tend to agree with JJ because this has been phenomenal. And I'm looking forward to discussing it with you guys. Before I get into my 4 points from each episode, 7 and 8, man, how about the soundtrack? I mean, I alluded to it before, but this soundtrack is phenomenal. I'm bad, down with the king, the choice is yours. The hip hop has just been phenomenal. And I'm loving it. Even step into a world with KRS-One. So kudos to whoever put the soundtrack together. They've been jamming. And then also I think this, in my view, off the top of my head, I think these episodes 7 and 8 had the best footage from that 97-98 season. MJ in practice talking trash, talking to Scott Burrell. This is when you finally got to see him and how he interacted with his teammates in practice. And then even, in the locker room with the baseball bat and the cigar. I just thought this was the best footage from the 97-98 season. Up to this point, a lot of it was, the best stuff was just going back and talking about MJ's career before that season, which still was great in this one, but I thought the footage was definitely better. So anyway, let me get into my 4 points. The first point, which is interesting, being that this is Mother's Day, and happy Mother's Day to all the wonderful women out there and the women and mothers in your life if you're a male. And also for me, I lost my father-in-law 3 weeks ago to COVID-19. And so I'm actually going to his burial tomorrow morning. So interesting that my first point with those two things in consideration is the power of fatherhood. And I thought it was great that you saw how close Michael Jordan was with his dad and the impact his dad had on him. And even to the point where he said, in ninth grade as a freshman in high school, he got suspended like three times. And it was his dad sitting him down as only a dad can and telling him, look, you're not headed in the right direction. And my guess is that he told him very sternly. And so I thought that was powerful. And I know in our country, it's a massive fatherlessness crisis. A lot of people focus on the African-American community, and it's bad in our community. It's roughly 75% of children born without their father in the home, but it's bad. It's all throughout America. It's now roughly half of the children in America of any race are born without the father in the home. And so I just want to say, I know there are a lot of reasons for that. There are a lot of systemic reasons that can contribute to that. But I would like to say to every man out there who has children, man, you got to do your best to be in the life of your child. Mothers do a tremendous job. And I have twin daughters, and having daughters or children, period, has taught me, just given me even more respect for single parents. Most of the single parents out there raising kids are women, but men too. But it's just given me tremendous respect for single parents. But I want to say to all the fathers out there, man, do whatever you can to be a father to your child. And mothers, single mothers, if you've had beef issues with the father of your children, don't make that keep you from letting them be in the life of your child. I mean, unless they're criminal, still involved in crime, or abusive to the kids or something like that. But if they legitimately want to do the right thing and you be in their child's life, you should let them. even though you've got beef with them, because there's nothing like having a father. And I'm loving that we're seeing this in Michael Jordan's life. I know in my life, man, look, my dad is 5'6". Like when I was growing up, 125 to 130 pounds. But to me, he was Superman. To me, he was the strongest dude in the world, okay? I loved feeling his muscles. And I mean, that's how powerful a father is. So brothers out there, do whatever you can. Brothers and men in general, do whatever you can to be a great father to your child. And if your dad wasn't there, I say take a page from LeBron James's book, how he's obviously turned into a wonderful father. Didn't have that example in his life, but he took what he wished he had and he's given it to his children. So that's the first lesson, the power of a father, which really runs throughout episodes 7 and 8. Number 2, the second lesson from episode 7, Magic. This one, most people are not going to see this. Magic and Bird were to Michael what Michael is or was to Kobe and LeBron. And here's why I say that. The reason Michael Jordan, we even saw it in last week when he was saying, in the Dream Team, we saw Magic and Bird. They were the standard. They were, winning more MVPs than Jordan when they were in the league. Bird won 3 straight, and Jordan was in the league at least 2 of those years, I believe. Magic was winning more MVPs while he played and Jordan played than Mike did. And so they were winning, obviously, more championships. And those were the guys that Jordan was compared to when he was lighting the league up with 37 points a game, 35 points a game, 32 points, 8 assists, 8 rebounds a game, but losing in the playoffs to the Pistons and maybe other teams. People were ripping Jordan. He's not Larry. He's not Magic. Oh, sure, he can put up these numbers, but he's not. They win. They could do it if they wanted to. They'd just rather win. So those were the standard bearers for him. So when he won 3, you saw when he told Mark Vancil, who had written his book, Rare Air. Mark Vancil, the author, said that at the Olympics in 92, after Michael had won his 2nd ring, he told Vancil, I'm about to retire and go play baseball. I'm going to shock the world. And he told Vancil, the reason I'm not doing it now is because Magic and Bird never won 3 straight. I want to win 3 straight, then I'm out. And so that was his standard, to beat those 2. And he did. When he won his 3rd ring in the first three-peat, they became the first team, the Bulls, to win at least 3 straight championships since Bill Russell's Celtics had won 7 straight, I believe, from 59 to 1966. After that point in, those almost 30 years, no one had won 3 straight. The Lakers had a great achievement when they won 2 straight in 87 and 88. And then, of course, the Bad Boys did it again with 2 straight. So that was what Jordan was seeking. And we saw in Kobe that he wanted to be like Mike. I'm sure he would have loved to have surpassed Mike in championships won. Obviously, he got 5. He fell 1 short. But that was the guy that Kobe was going after, trying to be better than, like Jordan with Magic and Bird. And then LeBron. I mean, LeBron said it a few years ago after they beat Golden State, I'm chasing that ghost in Chicago. So Magic and Bird were that for Jordan. He was chasing him. And once he passed them and won 3 straight, then he felt like, hey, I've achieved what I need to achieve. And he walked away from basketball. I thought it was also interesting that, a lot of times when you debate the GOAT, the rings always come into it. But Jordan, even after only 3, I say only 3, but a 3-peat, and he had 3 championships, you saw he was widely, and I remember it, he was widely viewed as the greatest ever, as the GOAT. they had already put him ahead of Wilt Chamberlain. They had already put him ahead of Kareem and Magic and Bird and everybody. He was viewed with only 3 championships as the GOAT because he had dominated individually with the numbers, and then he won as well, broke conventional wisdom, which was that you couldn't build a dynasty around a 2-guard. You couldn't lead the league in scoring and win championships. So he was viewed, you saw Tom Brokaw referred to him as the greatest player that's ever lived. Robin Roberts at one point referred to him as the greatest player of all time. Jerry Reinsdorf, okay, maybe he was biased, he's the owner of the Bulls. He referred to him as the greatest player of all time. So, and then when they built the statue out in front of the United Center, they called him the greatest there ever was, the greatest there ever will be. Put that on your bucket list. Go see that statue in Chicago. It's tremendous. I think that's Craig Elo getting yoked on. But it was interesting that, the 6 rings always comes into the GOAT conversation, but he was viewed as that after just 3 because he was so gosh darn dominant. All right, the third thing, why MJ got away with being such a tough teammate. I mean, you saw him calling his teammates names. They talked about the fight with Kerr, which I'll get into from the next episode. But here's why he was able to get away with it. Because, I've covered the NBA since 1995. So that's 25 years. And I've seen star players, try to lead like MJ. Because we may have seen some footage we didn't see before, but it was known how hardcore Jordan was with his teammates. And so a lot of guys, I've seen stars in the past that I covered try to lead like Michael Jordan and try to be so hardcore on their teammates, and it didn't work. And one reason I think it didn't work is because even though as Jordan was so hard on his teammates, his goal was always to win. It was really to build them up and prepare them for the battles they'll face in the playoffs. It wasn't just, I'm going to establish myself as the man in this locker room. It wasn't, I just want to be the baddest dude in the locker room. I want to be the baddest dude on the team. It wasn't selfish. It was, this is what it takes for us to win. Now, whether you believe that's the case or not, maybe there's another way. There obviously are other ways to lead. But to Jordan, that is what was necessary for him to build up his team so they could win championships. And again, it worked. One reason, because I believe they understood it was because he's doing this to make us better. He's doing it to make us better. And, I'm sure all players get along with their teammates to some degree off the court. Most, I should say. But he also, you could see off the court, he laughed, joked with guys and, showed that he's cool with them. But they feared him. And that's a heck of a thing to say, that grown men feared another grown man. Half of them were bigger than him, and they still feared him. The second reason it worked was because he was so good. Period. That's the bigger reason, is that he was so good, it was working. You saw Bill Winnington say it. He was right. It worked. We won. Now, you got to be good enough to win championships if you're going to drive your teammates that hard. Because they got to a point where it's like, yo, we aren't the stars, but we're a part of the circus. We get the love too at the hotels. We get the love too on the road. We get the love too maybe with different little endorsements or all the benefits that came from being a championship team, a player on the championship team, a starter on the championship team, part of the Michael Jordan caravan. That came along with it. So you jump on board. Hey, he's hard on this, but it's some fringe benefits up in this mug. Okay, so that's another reason. And we even saw it with Jordan. When he went to Washington later in his career, his third comeback, or second comeback, I guess, he wasn't as good. He was still very good, legitimate all-star, but he wasn't good enough to lead them to championships or even the playoffs. but he still was hard driving. And I was there. I covered the end of that run for the New York Times. Those players hated Jordan. I mean, hate might be strong. They disliked him strongly. Guys who had grown up admiring him, poster on their wall, trying to be like Mike, couldn't stand the brother because he didn't change. He was the same old Mike. He just wasn't great enough anymore to lead you to championship. So you future ballers out there, know this. If you're going to be that type of leader, and this goes for any area of endeavor, then you better be delivering the goods. You better be winning awards. You better be making the company money. You better be the best, because that's the only reason other grown men gonna put up with it. All right, the fourth thing for episode 7, Pippen was the perfect number 2. Scottie Pippen is a great player, top 50 player of all time, of course, and he showed it. That year without Mike, he showed. That's when, in my mind, I began to recognize him as a great player in his own right. Now, I do think that, obviously, on those championship teams in the first three-peat, he was very good individually. But without Mike, he showed that he was legitimately a top 5, 10 player in the NBA on his own. And I'm going to say this too. We saw what Jordan was saying with Scott Burrell, how hard he pushed him. I've always felt this, just as a guy that wasn't even covering the NBA at this time, watching Scottie develop with the Bulls. I remember just as a high school reporter who would watch the games saying, man, this dude is benefiting from playing with Michael Jordan. Not because Jordan draws double and triple teams and it makes it lighter on Scottie on the court. No, the work that Jordan was leading Scottie to put in off the court, the way Scottie was developing and improving as a player every single year, I could see it. And I was like, it's almost like I see him mimicking parts of Mike's game. And so Jordan's pushing of Scottie, challenging Scottie, pushing him to be great. All of that helped Scottie realize the potential that was within him. And I'm not sure Scottie would have become that guy without Mike. Another reason Scottie was the perfect number 2 was because you saw that he wasn't a number 1. As great as he was the year Jordan was gone, what he pulled in that series with the Knicks, staying on the bench, I mean, that was the ultimate selfish act. And you saw it, Steve Kerr called it, Bill Cartwright. I mean, they all called it. Horace Grant, you couldn't help. Horace Grant wasn't with him, but you couldn't help but call that. And obviously Scottie regrets it, although I can't believe he said, if I had to do over again, I would do it the same way. I hope. One thing I hear a lot of people, and I'm saying athletes, I'm sure other people say it, but I hear a lot of athletes and entertainers say, I never regret anything. I never have any regrets. Stop it. You Jesus Christ? You never had no regrets? You never did anything wrong? You never look back, man, I wish I hadn't done that. Of course, we all have regrets. Doesn't make you a bad person. Doesn't make you worse than anybody else. We all have regrets. I got regrets. It's not, it doesn't take away from your manhood that you have regrets. And don't give me, well, because I learned from it. That's great. Turn that negative into a positive. And yes, we can learn from our mistakes. But I still, and I'm sure you have too, done things I wish I had never done. I regret. And so stop it with the, I never regret anything. Come on, please. Because you want to be held to that type of standard? Really? You want to be held to the standard of perfection? Stop it. All right, so Scottie, that showed, though, that he would not go out on the court. You can even maybe understand why you're upset. And you still go out on the court, though, and run the play, but you pissed. And you deal with Phil after, talk to him after, whatever. But that showed that you weren't built to be the number 1. You were built to be the number 2. Because when you tried to step into the number 1 role and the play wasn't called for you, you went off the handle. And so that showed that. And I think today, and not just today, but throughout NBA history, there have been guys who are great players, all-time great players, but they're not built to be number one. They're built to be number two, but they're in the number one position. And that's why you see some great players, their teams never play up to their potential, or their teams never are that good, even though they're very talented as an individual, because they're not built to be the number one. They're built to be a number two. Okay, so that's what we saw in Scottie. He's not alone. It doesn't take away from his all-time greatness, his Hall of Fame career and all that, but he was a number two and one of the best that we've ever seen do it. All right, let's move on to episode 8. The first lesson from episode 8, Jordan's unmatched competitiveness. I mean, that, this is going to be brief. The dude, the LeBradford Smith story, I love that Mike Wilbon and David Aldridge told it, because that was it. He made it up. He made it up. That LeBradford said, nice game, Mike. Even if LeBradford had said, LeBradford Smith, and for those who don't know, he was a great player I believe he's at Louisville. If I'm 99% sure, but he was a great player in college at Louisville. And so Mike, just that competitiveness, man, was something unlike we've seen before. And you're seeing it in this. I'm going to move quickly to the next one. The comeback year from baseball. Now, my beloved friend and colleague at FS1, Nick Wright, he'll be on First Things First tomorrow, I'm sure. I wish I'd be on with him, but I told you I'm going to the burial for my father-in-law, so I'm off tomorrow. But Nick's going to be up there. Jordan lost. I thought Jordan never lost. Chris Broussard and Skip Bayless and all these guys say he never lost. We saw it. Did that happen? He's going to make a mockery of it. What Michael Jordan did in those 17 games back in the regular season and then in the playoffs is, even though they lost, it really wasn't a failure. It really showed his greatness. I mean, this dude took a year and a half off from basketball. Not playing basketball at all. Playing baseball, and you saw the work ethic. I mean, they said he was working his tail off, and shout out to Mike, because, Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner of the White Sox, and Terry Francona, great manager, great manager in major leagues now, was in the minors, managed Mike, said he'd have got to the major leagues. He had 252 in Arizona Fall League. He was improving dramatically. And that's incredible, a testament to his great athleticism, that he could sit out from 17 to 31 in baseball and get back within a year and a half. And he's got people saying they think he would have made it to the majors. So that's a testament to him. But the fact that he could be out so long working on another sport, and Tim Grover's a great trainer. I know Tim well. Talked about it. We built his body for another sport. And you could see it. I remember, and again, this was the 95, 96. I was, covering the league the year. No, I wasn't covering it the year he came back. And I remember watching, obviously, his games, and his body was different. You could see it. It was not the same type of build. I mean, still obviously was in good shape somewhat, because obviously he got tired, but you could just see his body did not look the same. It didn't look quite as cut up, defined, sinewy as before. It just looked different. And you could see it. And yet and still, he put 55 on the Knicks in his 5th game back. The Knicks, who were a tremendous defensive team. And yet and still, 2nd game back, he hits a game winner, buzzer beater against Atlanta. I mean, and then to go 6 games with Shaq, Penny, y'all don't know. Y'all young kids, I'm going to have to do a young kid, you kids don't know on Penny. Penny, this is before the injury. Penny Hardaway was a superstar of the highest order at this time. As high as anybody got below Jordan. He had the commercials with Tyra Banks and Chris Rock and Little Penny and the dope foam posit sneakers. I mean, I think he had the foam posit, but he had some dope Nikes. You know, he was endorsing Nike. But Penny was the man. Penny would have been a Hall of Famer if he hadn't had the injuries. And him and Shaq, and I know Shaq wasn't as smart as he was later in his career, but he was as physically dominant and more athletic. And so Shaq wasn't no joke. Nick Anderson was a bad boy at that time. Horace Grant, you know, I mean, that was a team. And he went 6 with them after really not being in any type of basketball shape and his body being all built for another sport. Incredible. And those of you who play multiple sports, I know a lot of the young kids, you specialize nowadays, but I grew up playing, I went from football, and then I'd go to basketball, and then I'd go to baseball. My whole life from 8 years old up through high school. And I'm telling you, when we would move from football to basketball, your muscles that you worked were totally different. And you were incredibly sore, even though you were in good physical shape, because you're working different muscles. And then when we go to basketball to baseball, same deal. So that was incredible that Mike could even lift that team to those heights, coming back from a year and a half playing baseball. And then the Steve Kerr situation. This is a lesson. There's several teaching moments in this with Michael, this documentary. One, you know, I won't go through it because I don't want to take up too much time. But one is Steve Kerr standing up to Michael Jordan. Even though he got his butt kicked, you know, he stood up to Mike. And so that earned Michael's respect. And I got to say this, because you're seeing on the documentary, Michael Jordan's not one to apologize for many things. But he apologized. He knew he was wrong. And I like that he apologized that. And that's, again, don't be afraid to have a regret. But he said, I beat up the littlest dude on the team. You don't feel good about that. And I'm glad that he handled it afterwards the way he did. But Steve Kerr gained his respect. So what I say to you guys is you got to have heart, man. You got to stand up for yourself. You got to show your heart. Even if you're going to get beat, you got to show your heart and your courage. It might not even be physically, but just stand up for yourself verbally or, you know, in your actions. Again, doesn't have to be a fight, but stand up for yourself. People will respect that. My wife, as some of you may know, my wife's a medical doctor, and she's a partner in her practice. And when I first met one of the partners, they told me that actually, I'm sorry, this when she worked at the Cleveland Clinic. When we lived in Cleveland, she worked at the Cleveland Clinic, great hospital. Not one of her partners here in Jersey, but one of her colleagues, and a guy that was one of her supervisors at that time. I first met him, and he said, "Man, your wife is so strong." And she really showed me her strength and gained all of our respect when we had some type of assignment that had to be done, and they gave it to somebody else. And she thought she deserved to get it and was able to do it and qualified to do it. And she went to them. She went to the higher ups and told them, you know, I'm bothered that you didn't give me that assignment. I could have done it. I'm qualified. I know I was capable of doing it. And I just had to let you guys know that it bothered me. And that gained their respect, that she stood up for herself. And, you know, even though, you know, that's how you gain people's respect. You stand up for yourself, even if you lose, even if you get beat like Steve Kerr did, you stand up for yourself, and that you'll feel better about yourself, and the people you stand up to will respect you even more. The final thing, the 72-10 team was the greatest ever. And Steve Kerr, it's interesting when he said it. He said that was the best team he's ever been associated with. Now, these interviews were fairly recent. So that's after the great run he had with, and may have, we'll see what they do in the future, but the great run he had with the Warriors. not only the 73 win team that obviously didn't close it out, but the team before that won the championship and then had Kevin Durant, he still said that was the best team he was associated with. And again, for them to dismantle Shaq and Penny the way they did, swept them. That's incredible. I'm sorry. That's amazing that they did that. And Shaq and Penny were hungry too. They had just been to the finals and gotten beaten by Hakeem Olajuwon and Houston. I think they got swept in that series too. And so they were hungry to come back. Okay, we learned, and we were young. We were the young boys. Yeah, we took our lumps. Now we back. We seen how it works. Detroit took their lumps at the hands of Boston, then overcame. Chicago took their lumps at the hands of Detroit, then overcame. We took our lumps. That's right. We ready now, and they got swept. And so that was a great Bulls team. And I loved, and this is my last point, then I'll answer some questions. I loved that Jordan was laughing about Gary Payton saying he like gave Mike trouble. And shout out to GP. GP is was a tremendous player and was an incredible defender and deserving of his Hall of Fame and an all-time great point guard. And too many people sleep on him. He's the top 10 point guard of all time. And GP was awesome. But I remember watching that series. And I mean, this nonsense that Gary Payton turned the series around when he guarded Jordan and shut Jordan down. The Bulls were up 3-0. And you saw some of the highlights in the first few games. It wasn't like Payton never ended up on Jordan. He was on Jordan enough in the first several games, and Jordan was taking him to the bucket like everybody else. I remember when the Bulls were up 3-0 thinking, and then watching the next two games thinking, man, they coasted. They know it's over. They know it's over like the rest of us. Mike was taking a rest, and it obviously showed that he was heartbroken because he was thinking about his dad. But I mean, that notion never sat, well, oh, they put GP on. You know, like if GP had guarded him from the beginning of the series, oh, Seattle might have won. Stop it. Jordan was going to put 35, 36, whatever on GP, just like Hershey Hawkins and the rest of them. And that was a great Seattle team. Sean Kemp, Hershey Hawkins, Gary Payton, Detlef Shrimp, Sam Perkins, one of the first stretch 4 or 5s. I mean, that was a great team, but they were no match for the best team ever, the 96 Bulls. So there you have it, my takeaways